Let's get down to business. I want to demonstrate how to create and set up a basic data set comparison in EasyMorph in 15 minutes. Afterwards, I will share a more advanced data comparison EasyMorph application. So let's jump right into it. I will open a file that I started earlier on. In this specific file, I have already added my parameters that I spoke about earlier on, and I've also included some connectors that I spoke about earlier on. So my base file is prepared and we can start right away. First thing that we normally do is we normally drag files onto the canvas and then start importing those files and transforming the files. However, each time that we will import a file, the name will be different. We need to get a list of all the files in a specific folder. So I will use my parameter that I set up for my source and pointing it to my source folder, only bringing across the file name and full path, as well as the date modified. If I run that specific action, you will see I've got 8 files, 2 columns by 8 rows, which means these are the 8 files that are available. Now, I'm only interested in the last 2, so I will use the function or the action maximum, and on date modified, I will keep the biggest or the last 2 files. I'm going to sort on the date modified and sort it descending to get the latest one on top and the earliest file at the bottom. So here are my files, mock data file 12 and 11. Now I will start importing the data. I will right click and use an action called derive, which is nothing else than copying the table results as it stands. I'm going to rename this table and I'm going to call that current, and I will then only keep the top 1 record. So I use the trim table action and I will keep the top record, and after I've identified the top record, I will then import that specific record. So this is a text delimited file, so we will use import delimited text. I will drag it onto my table and I will load it from the list of files that appears on the file name with full path, and I will apply and run it, and here you have the one data set, the most current data set. I will repeat the process to get the previous data in. I've just selected the table and I'm pasting the information, and now I will make a few changes. I will rename this table and call this previous. I will then run the first action. The second action, I will trim the table to keep the bottom 1 record. And lastly, I will import it. Now I've got 2 dataset records. The one is my current file and the other one is the previous file. Now if I do not want to work with certain columns, I can keep my shift down and select the column and right mouse click and remove the columns. Another way of getting rid of some columns is actually just not to import it. If I click on the last action where I imported the text delimited file, I can go and load only selected columns, and I can select all and just unselect the ones that I do not want. If I now say apply, you will see it imports everything but the 2 that I selected. My next step will be to compare the current data set with the previous data set, and everything that's in my current and not in my previous will be records that were added, and everything that's in my previous but not in my current will be record sets that were deleted. So to do that, I will right mouse click, create another copy of the table. I will rename that and I will call it added, and click away. I will select it again, and then I'm going to say I want to match it, and I want to match it with the previous table, and I want to remove matching so that I only keep any mismatching, and it will be only on ID equals to ID, and apply. So if I run that, you will see I've got 7 records here that were added from the previous record set to the current record set. I will do exactly the same with my previous data set. I want to find out which are the records that were delimited. I will add the action and again type in matching. And I will remove matching, only keeping mismatching. And now I'm comparing this previous with the current, and the link is between ID and ID, and I apply and I run it, and there's one record that do not appear in the current data set. Before I compare on each field name the changes where the record set stayed the same, I'm just going to continue and actually prepare these tables for our export. So I'm going to click the added record, and the action is export, and I'm going to export this to Excel. I have already developed a parameter for the field name. I'm going to every time create a new file, it will override if it exists, and on this specific tab I want it to be added. Now I want this first table to run all the actions before it completes the delimited table. The way to ensure that, I will use the function synchronize. So this synchronizes means that all the different actions needs to be completed over here before it actually continues and run these actions over on this specific table. I'm going to add again, and I'm going to export to Excel. And we will use the same file. We will create a sheet in an existing folder. We will call this the limited. The next part is I want to compare field by field to understand if any changes in the field took place. So I will start with my current table, and I will copy a table, and I'm going to copy it to a new group or a new tab, and that tab I'm going to call item, because we'll be comparing the different items. I will now bring across my previous table as well, and move the table to items. So now I will compare these to previous and current with all items. I will rename this to previous items. And although this table is currently the current items, I will rename it to final items, as I will merge the data back into this table. But the way to go about it is to add an action and unpivot the data star. for us to compare each field. So the labels I will call field names. The columns names for data, this is the current or the to column, and the only field that I will not unpivot is the ID. So if we run it, this is the way the data will look like. I will do exactly the same to the previous item, so I'm going to add the item, add an action, unpivot. I will call it field names, and I will call it previous or from, and I'm not going to pivot the ID, and run it. I've got two data sets. Now I need to merge this data set in here, and I will use the action called merge, and the table that we want to merge is previous items, and we will merge it while the columns ID and the columns field names should be the same, and I'm just going to bring across previous or from and apply. So if I run it now, so if I run the action now, you will see we've got the field name, the ID field name, what it is currently and what it was previously. I will now add a column just to understand if there were any changes, and I'm just going to use current equals to previous, OK, and apply it. You will see if they match, it's true. If they do not match, it's false. So I only want to filter out everything that's false, and I want to filter out anything that was empty on the previous. So this will then give us the record set of what did change. Now again, we're going to export that, but before we export it, we use the function synchronize, and the last synchronize was delimited. The last export was on delimited. Before you actually run this table and export the data, and we will export it again to Excel. We'll use parameter of a file name that we've already decided on. We will create a new sheet, and we will call that item change. Apply. Now I want to do one more thing. I want to email a specific person once the process has been completed. Subjects daily run, and I'm just going to copy and paste the message that I've got. You can put any message in here and apply. I would like to show you how my folder structure look like, expecting a file to be created in this specific destination. There is a file created. The next steps now will be to set up your scheduler to run this project automatically. So if I open a launcher, I can add a new task, and the task that I want to run, I'm going to schedule it, and I'm going to schedule it once, and I'm going to schedule it for 10:30, and OK. So it's completed. It ran 22:30, and there's the file in my SharePoint. And lastly, I'm going to show you the email that was generated same time, 10:30 or 22:30. So we've successfully set up a file, we ran it, we automated it, done all in 15 minutes.